Get out. We don't need a single mother ruining our family name. My mother-in-law screamed, throwing my clothes on the lawn. I rubbed my belly and smiled. My $3.20 million trust fund would buy me a better family. The designer maternity dress hit the wet grass with a splat, followed by my shoes, one at a time. Eleanor Whitfield, my mother-in-law, had the throwing arm of a major league pitcher and the compassion of a brick wall. 8 months pregnant, and you couldn't keep your legs closed for one more month? She shrieked, hurling my jewelry box next. It opened mid-flight, scattering my belongings across the manicured lawn like fallen stars. I stood on the doorstep of the Whitfield mansion, one hand protectively over my swollen belly, the other gripping the door frame for support. Inside, my ex-husband, as of an hour ago, sat in his father's study, letting Mommy handle the dirty work of throwing out his pregnant wife. My name is Amelia Harper, and at 28, I was learning that fairy tales could turn into nightmares with a single text message. The text had come that morning while Ryan was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I'd reached for it automatically, thinking it might be about the baby furniture delivery we were expecting. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. My husband's away on business again. Wear the red tie I bought you. See, Cynthia Morrison, his business partner's wife. The photos in the message thread left no room for interpretation. My husband of 3 years, the father of my unborn child, had been having an affair for months. While I'd been picking out nursery colors and reading baby books, he'd been playing house with another woman. When I confronted him, Ryan didn't even try to deny it. It's just physical, he'd said, as if that made it better. Cynthia understands me in ways you don't. You're always tired, always talking about the baby. I'm carrying your child. A child I'm not even sure is mine, he'd shot back. The accusation had hit me like a physical blow. I'd never so much as looked at another man since we'd started dating 5 years ago. But Ryan had already made up his mind, and within an hour, his parents had arrived for an emergency family meeting. That meeting had ended with Richard Whitfield, patriarch and CEO of Whitfield Industries, sliding divorce papers across his mahogany desk. Sign them, and we'll give you $50,000 to go away quietly. Don't sign, and you'll get nothing. We have the best lawyers in the state. I'm 8 months pregnant with your grandchild, I'd said, still in shock. Allegedly, Eleanor had interjected. And even if it is Ryan's, we don't need a gold digger raising a Whitfield heir. Gold digger. They'd thrown that word around like confetti since Ryan and I started dating. Never mind that I'd never asked for anything, that I'd signed their prenup without complaint, that I'd given up my career as a financial analyst to be the perfect Whitfield wife. They knew I'd grown up in foster care. They knew I had no family to defend me. What they didn't know was that I'd been very, very careful never to mention the trust fund. My biological parents had died in a plane crash when I was 2. I'd bounced through foster homes for 16 years, surviving on grit and hope. What I hadn't known until my 21st birthday was that my parents had been worth millions. Old money, tied up in trusts and investments, waiting for me to come of age. $3.2 million to be exact. Plus properties in Martha's Vineyard and Aspen that I'd never even visited. I'd kept it secret throughout my relationship with Ryan, wanting to be loved for myself, not my money. I'd watched how his family treated new money people at their country club, with barely concealed disdain. So I'd played the part of the grateful foster kid who'd hit the jackpot by marrying into the Whitfield dynasty. Now, standing on their lawn in the rain, watching Eleanor destroy my belongings, I was grateful for my deception. Are you deaf? Eleanor screeched. Get off our property before I call the police. Eleanor, I said calmly, bending awkwardly to pick up my grandmother's pearl necklace from the grass. You're making a scene. What will the neighbors think? I don't give a damn what they think. But she did. Eleanor Whitfield lived for appearances, and curtains were already twitching in the neighboring mansions. Richard appeared in the doorway, his face carved from stone. You have 10 minutes to collect your things and leave. The locks will be changed within the hour. What about my car? The Mercedes Ryan had given me for our anniversary was in the garage. The car belongs to my son, Richard said coldly. As does everything else you've been given during your marriage. Consider yourself lucky we're not pressing charges for theft. Theft. 3 years of marriage, a baby on the way, and they were calling me a thief. I looked up at the window of Ryan's study. He was watching, his face unreadable behind the glass. When our eyes met, he simply closed the curtains. 10 minutes, Richard repeated, checking his Rolex. Starting now. I gathered what I could, my back screaming in protest every time I bent down. Eleanor watched with satisfaction as I struggled, occasionally kicking something further across the lawn just to make me walk more. Neither she nor Richard offered to help. A town car pulled up, one I'd called while they were busy yelling. The driver, seeing my condition, immediately rushed to help. "Ma'am, should I call someone? The police? An ambulance?" He was young, horrified by the scene. "No need," I said, loud enough for the Whitfields to hear. "Just take me to the Four Seasons, please. The penthouse suite." Eleanor snorted. "The Four Seasons? With what money?" I paused at the car door, turning back with the smile I'd been hiding for 3 years. "My money, Eleanor. You know, the trust fund you never knew about? The one worth more than your husband's entire portfolio." The silence was delicious. "You're lying," she said, but uncertainty flickered in her eyes. "Am I? Check the Forbes list from 5 years ago. Harper Industries, ring any bells? My father built that company. Maybe you even use our products." I touched my belly gently. "This baby? She'll inherit everything. And she'll never, ever know your names." Richard stepped forward. "Now wait a minute." "No, you wait." My voice was steel now. "You threw out your pregnant daughter-in-law based on your son's lies. You chose to believe I was a gold digger rather than the woman who loved your son despite his family. You made your choice. Now live with it." "If you have money, the prenup," Richard started. "The prenup I signed protects your assets, not mine." I smiled wider. "My lawyers made sure of that. Funny how you never asked why a foster kid could afford lawyers to review your prenup." The driver helped me into the car. As we pulled away, I saw Eleanor grab Richard's arm, gesticulating wildly. Ryan had come outside, his face pale as his parents undoubtedly filled him in on this development. My phone started ringing before we even reached the gates. "Ryan." I sent it to voicemail. By the time I reached the Four Seasons, I had 17 missed calls and 43 texts. They ranged from Ryan's, "We need to talk," to Eleanor's, "This doesn't change anything," to Richard's formal, "We should discuss this like civilized people." I turned off my phone and checked in. The penthouse suite was exactly what I needed: luxury, privacy, and a deep soaking tub for my aching back. I'd been saving the reveal of my trust fund for our child's birth, planning to surprise Ryan with the news that our baby would never want for anything. Now I was glad I'd waited. Their true colors were finally showing, and they were ugly. The next morning, my phone had over 200 notifications. I scrolled through them while eating room service breakfast, my baby kicking as if she too was amused by the desperation. The most interesting message was from Cynthia Morrison herself. "I didn't know you were pregnant. I'm so sorry. He told me you were separated." I called her back. "Amelia?" She sounded terrified. I'm not calling to yell at you," I said calmly. "I'm calling to warn you. Ryan Whitfield is a liar and a manipulator. He's also broke without his family's money. Did you know that?" "What?" "His trust fund has conditions. Moral clauses. Infidelity voids everything. I'd done my homework on the Whitfield family long ago. His parents will cut him off to save face. You're sleeping with a soon-to-be poor man who cheats on his pregnant wife." The silence on her end was telling. "Also," I continued, "your husband might want to know about those charges at the Ritz-Carlton on his company card. Just saying." I hung up and called my lawyer. Not the cheap one I'd pretended to have, but the real one. Margaret Winters had handled my family's affairs for decades. "Amelia, darling, I heard you were pregnant." "How?" "I need you to destroy the Whitfields," I said simply. "Legally, of course." "Oh my. What happened?" I explained everything. By the end, Margaret was practically purring with anticipation. "They threw you out. While pregnant. With witnesses. The entire neighborhood saw. I'm sure there's security footage too. Delicious. And they had no idea about your trust. None. They think I'm a gold-digging foster kid. Perfect. We'll file for divorce immediately. Grounds of adultery, emotional distress, and potentially assault given your condition. Their prenup won't protect them from that." She paused. "You know, your father would have loved this. He always enjoyed a good comeuppance." "What about custody?" "They threw out a pregnant woman. No judge in the country would give them access to that child. Especially when we reveal their son's affair and their treatment of you." Another pause. "Speaking of which, have you seen a doctor?" "Document everything. Every ache, every pain, every moment of stress. It's all evidence." I spent the next week in the penthouse, seeing doctors, meeting with lawyers, and shopping for my baby. Not at the boutiques Eleanor approved of, but at the places I actually liked. I hired a private nurse to monitor my health and a security team to handle the increasingly desperate Whitfields. Ryan tried everything. He sent flowers. I donated them to the hospital. He sent jewelry. I sold it and gave the money to a women's shelter. He even stood outside the hotel with a boombox like some 80s movie, until security escorted him away. Eleanor tried a different approach. She had her society friends call me, begging me to think of the family. When that didn't work, she tried to have me blacklisted from charitable organizations, not realizing I could buy my way onto any board I wanted. Richard went straight for threats. Legal action for fraud, baseless. Demands for paternity tests, which I agreed to after birth, and attempts to freeze assets he didn't know existed. The best part was watching their empire crack. Word spread quickly in their social circle. The Whitfields had thrown out their pregnant daughter-in-law. The scandal was delicious, and their country club friends ate it up. Then Cynthia Morrison decided to come clean to her husband. The fallout was spectacular. Tom Morrison not only divorced Cynthia, but pulled out of a major business deal with Whitfield Industries. Other partners, smelling blood in the water, started distancing themselves. Ryan's trust fund was frozen pending investigation of the moral clause. Without his allowance, he couldn't maintain his lifestyle. The apartment, the cars, the club memberships, all gone within a month. But the real blow came when I gave birth. Charlotte Harper. I gave her my name, not theirs, was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and her father's eyes. I almost felt bad for Ryan. Almost. The paternity test confirmed what I'd always known. She was his. The Whitfields immediately sued for grandparents' rights. It was a tactical error. In court, my lawyers painted a devastating picture. Security footage from their neighbors showed Eleanor throwing my belongings while I stood there, 8 months pregnant. Testimony from witnesses confirmed they'd accused me of infidelity without evidence. Medical records showed the stress they'd caused had nearly triggered early labor. But the killing blow was Eleanor's own words, captured on the doorbell camera of a neighbor. "We don't need a single mother ruining our family name." The judge not only denied their petition, but issued a restraining order. They couldn't come within 500 feet of Charlotte or me. "Your Honor," their lawyer pleaded, their grandparents. "Surely some supervised visitation." "They threw out a pregnant woman," the judge interrupted. "They endangered both mother and child. They're lucky I'm not referring this to criminal court." I sat in that courtroom, Charlotte sleeping in my arms, and felt nothing but peace. The Whitfields sat across from us, looking older, smaller, diminished. Their empire was crumbling, their reputation destroyed, their grandson forever out of reach. Eleanor tried to approach me outside the courthouse. Security stopped her, but she called out, "Amelia, please. She's our granddaughter." "No," I said clearly. "She's my daughter. You made your choice that night on your lawn. Now live with it. We didn't know about your money." Richard called out, as if that made it better. I turned back, shifting Charlotte in my arms. "Exactly. You threw me out because you thought I was poor. You showed me exactly who you are, people who only value money. Well, congratulations. You chose money over family, and now you have neither. That was 6 months ago. Charlotte is thriving, surrounded by nannies, tutors, and all the love money can and can't buy. We split our time between the Martha's Vineyard house and a new estate I purchased, far from the Whitfields and their influence. Ryan sends letters I don't read and checks I don't cash. His life imploded completely after the divorce. Without his trust fund or his family's support, he discovered what I always knew. He was nothing without his last name. Last I heard, he was working as a car salesman, living in a studio apartment, still paying alimony and child support he can't afford. The Whitfields' downfall was slower, but more complete. The scandal destroyed their social standing. Richard's business partners, already nervous about the Morrison deal falling through, pulled out one by one. Within a year, Whitfield Industries was a shadow of its former self. Eleanor, for her part, became a pariah in her social circle. The woman who'd thrown out a pregnant daughter-in-law was no longer welcome at charity galas and country club lunches. She spent her days in that big, empty mansion, surrounded by photos of the grandchild she'd never know. Sometimes I think about revenge, but then I look at Charlotte and realize I already have it. They wanted to erase us, to pretend we never existed. Instead, we're thriving while they fade into obscurity. The trust fund Eleanor sneered at? It's now worth $4.7 million thanks to smart investments. Charlotte will never wonder where her next meal comes from, never feel unwanted, never be thrown away like garbage. She'll grow up knowing her worth isn't tied to her bank account or her last name. She'll know that family isn't about blood or money. It's about love, loyalty, and showing up when it matters. The Whitfields taught me that. Not by their example, but by their failure. So thank you, Eleanor, for throwing my clothes on that wet lawn. Thank you, Richard, for your cold dismissal. Thank you, Ryan, for showing me who you really were. Because of you, I found out who I really was too. A mother. A survivor. A woman with a trust fund and the sense to use it. You threw me out because you thought I'd ruin your family name. You were right. I did. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Charlotte stirs in her crib, and I go to her, picking her up and showing her the view from our Martha's Vineyard house. The ocean stretches endlessly before us, full of possibility. You see that, baby girl? I whisper. That's your future. Bigger than their small minds could ever imagine. She gurgles happily, and I hold her close. We don't need the Whitfields. We never did. My $3.2 million trust fund didn't buy me a better family. It revealed that I already had won, Charlotte and me against the world. And that's worth more than all the money in all the trust funds in the world. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.